Hello once more, my wonderful friends. It's time for another story of Neckbeardery. I don't have a catchphrase. I don't really have a thing. I'm sorry. Anyway, let's read this fucking story, huh? This is from Reddit user Phantom Flower. I think we read it in one of your stories before, huh? Out of the frying pan, into the fire. A Neckbeard story. Hello, everyone. I posted a story here before, and it really didn't have a happy-ish ending. I actually felt a little down. And then I remembered a story that makes me smile, because a form of justice was done. A story that happened during my senior year in high school. A few warnings, though. It's going to be a bit of a longer story than my last one, and I'm going to use a lot of nerdy references. So if you don't understand, I am really sorry. I'll try my best to explain it. Also, I'm sorry for spelling mistakes and formatting errors and stuff like that. Kind of on my phone. Here's a cast of characters. A few minor appearances featuring some brand new characters. Names changed to protect the innocent. Phantom, that's me. Total weeaboo nerd who loves almost everything pop culture. In my senior year of high school around the time this takes place. Mama nerd, well, my mom, just as nerdy as me and my brothers, still has a lot of her old comics from way back in the day. This includes the first appearance of the Wolverine, her most prized and favorite. She's also an elementary teacher, so she knows how to handle kids and deals with a lot of parents. This is important. The prime matriarch of the family, whom no one fucks with. Papa Nerd, well, my father. He's everyone's favorite person to go to when he had his store. It's really impossible to be angry at him. He taught me everything there is to know about comics and games. He actually encouraged me to continue drawing when I was at my lowest. The sweetie bear of the family that only wants the best for us. Aww. Sky Samurai, my sweetheart little brother, loves DC and Marvel comics and has a large amount of fantasy and superhero manga. He's a junior at the time, a little naive, and wants to be friends with everybody. Hawkma! I really like that guy's name. My older brother. Looks like a neckbeard, but he's a really nice dude, and not in that way. He knows that I'll kill him if he ever acted like that. Loves comics with loads of action and role-playing games. Already graduated, has a job at a clothing store. He's got a ton of friends there, too. Emily, local comic book artist, good friend of myself and my family. She's the reason why we kept going back to our old store. She's important to the story later. Nigel, the reason we went into the fire. Not the neckbeard of the story, but a total asshat. More on that soon enough. Family Beard. The fire. A disgusting human being who I'll get into later in the story, and the reason behind his name. Let's start things off with me explaining how we got into the metaphorical frying pan. You see, my dad used to own a comic book shop. He had it for a long while, since I was a little kid even. Legends say myself and my brothers were conceived on the floors of that comic store. It's more than I needed to know. My dad's a really good comic book guy. He even had the body type of that Simpsons character, minus the personality, of course. He'd recommend comics to a first-timer and get them hooked almost instantly. Then he'd strike up conversation for hours. He knew everyone on that little store strip, and they all knew him. He was even friends with another comic book store owner, who was his competition, and he would sometimes help that person out if he ran out of stock. And of course, my brothers and I hung out there a lot. We got our first dose of geekdom through him, and we couldn't be any happier. Which is why it was sad when we lost the store. I don't really know all the details, but I was told by my mom that he couldn't keep up the rent, and thus our little paradise was lost forever. Dad got a job elsewhere, but he wanted to keep that passion we had for comics alive and well. So as a family unit, we went out in search of a new watering hole for our nerdiness. This search was very long and tiresome, honestly. Most locations were hours away or only carried specific comics. My family liked a whole lot more variety. Finally, we found this store close to the beach. It seemed ideal. It was a decent size, had more than just DC and Marvel brand comics. Manga, games, a back room to do said gaming, able to set up pulls, basically layaway for comic people. the ability to special order, etc., etc. It seemed perfect. It was run by two people who took turns in the store. One was this cool comic girl, Emily. She was a thin, pretty woman, had long dark hair, dark eyes, wore women-fitted tees with some sort of awesome female superhero on them, her favorite heroines being Batwoman and Wonder Woman. She worked as a part-timer at the store. She also made a living selling her artwork. She drew comic book heroes with frightening accuracy. It was as if they came straight out of the pages. She'd also bring her dog to the store. He was a big old friendly dog, never bothered anyone, and he sat behind the counter with her. The other was Nigel, a scrawny, pale, blonde guy with glasses that screamed creeper glasses, honestly. He made the comic book experience hard for the next 2.5 years. The first few months were okay, then Nigel started pulling some stunts that were simply not okay with any of us. First thing he did, quite frequently, was not follow through some of the special orders. There was a comic that I was looking for, but Nigel did not have on the shelf. When I asked him if he could order it, he just looked at the computer, typed a few things, and told me, no. I didn't think anything of it at first, but the following week, when Emily was taking charge of the store, my mom ordered my comic trying to make it a surprise for my birthday, which I spoiled. I thought it was weird, but thought nothing of it, but it kept happening. And other stunts started happening too that really got under our skin. I'm going to list a few examples. I started getting into a comic called Saga by Brian K. Vaughan. I would recommend this comic to anyone, but keep it far away from the children. I asked Nigel to put Saga in my pull so I could start getting the latest issues. When I went to clean my pull, I saw that he had slipped another comic in by Brian K. Vaughan. He told me that I'd like it. I read it, and quite frankly, it didn't really appeal to me as much as Saga did. When I told him this, he just scoffed at me. It's stupid to not like all of his comics. I would never throw away any of his. Or, he asked me if I preferred Marvel or DC comics. I told him I'm more of a Image and Dark Horse kind of person. I do read Marvel and DC, but not a lot. He responds with, how can you not like Marvel and DC? It's really because most of those small-time companies aren't really anything at all. What a fucking asshole. He would always speak in this really condescending tone, like he's explaining something to a child. He did this to other customers, but mostly to me. I actually began to feel pretty stupid. I repeat my previous statement. What an asshole. He tried to pressure my brother into buying a huge stack of comics that no one really wanted. Nigel guilt-tripped him, referring to Sky Samurai as not a good friend for supporting his local comic store and helping out. Fucking prick. My little brother's a sweetheart and a bit naive, so don't blame him. He wanted to be on people's good side, so he bought some. But before he could finish buying the rest of the stack, Mom got a hold of it and flipped through some of them. None of them are really good comics, plus they're in terrible condition and really expensive. He got a hold of my older brother's phone while he wasn't looking and started calling his contacts to scam them into buying beach houses. My brother lost a lot of friends because of Nigel. A lot of them had to block Nigel's number. Fucking asshole. Tried for weeks to get my mom to sell her old comics to him. He especially wanted her X-Men comics, more particularly the first appearance of Wolverine. When she refused, he rudely said, "You're way too old for comics anyway. You don't need them anymore." Prick. She gave him this look that made me think that she was going to kill him in the store when he said that. He realized his mistake and never pressed on the matter again. He insulted my dad for being too nice for chatting up one of the customers. He's also pissed at my dad for not recommending him for another job he was after. My dad thankfully doesn't let anything faze him and keeps being friendly to everybody, even to Nigel. He even tried giving Nigel a few helpful tips about being a good comic store owner. Nigel responds along the lines of, "I don't need advice from someone who failed and got their store taken away." This guy sounds like a fucking prick, man. Holy shit. My dad never went back to the store after that. He told me later that he never wanted to hit someone so badly in all his life. Understandably so. He sold Emily's artwork without her consent and kept most of the money for himself. His reason behind this was because he was the manager, so he deserved most of the profits. He did try selling her artwork under his name, but he tried selling it to a close friend of hers who knew her style too well. And many, many more. And scary enough, it does get worse. Not violent or creepy in that kind of way, but it does get worse. Going to the comic book store felt like a chore. We'd try to go in only when Emily was at the counter. At least we'd get to relax a little and look around. But when he was at the store, we don't look around. We just empty our pull and get the fuck out, trying to avoid him and his toxic behavior as much as possible. And that was nearly impossible. He'd always pull us aside and try to sell us something we did not want, or try to start a discussion that always ended up in an argument that he just had to win. After 2 years of putting up with this guy, we're all in unanimous decision that we're going to try somewhere else. Emily was also fed up with Nigel's bullshit, especially after he neglected her dog one weekend. She was planning to move her business somewhere else. She managed to leave before us and set up her art business at a couple of local cons. For us, our last few days were met with whining, pleading from Nigel. He tried everything to get us to stay in the store. It seemed that the other customers were leaving as well. He attempted to slow down the process with us with anything he could. This included withholding our comics and saying that they hadn't come in yet. Needless to say, we were far from done. We left, and we're back at square one. We are a nerdy family unit without a comic book store to call home. But our search was not a long one, as fortune smiled upon us. A new store had just opened up, and it was 10 minutes away, and on the way to school, too. We were ecstatic by the news. Little did we know that we had just escaped the frying pan, only to land in the fire. My mom, my brothers, and I decided to scout the place out at first, after school was out for the day. The drive was short, 10 minutes away from the high school by car. The store just opened, and it was already packed. I recognized a few people there, too, former customers of Nigel. Upon entering the store, it was much smaller on the inside. A small room in the back for gaming and/or storage. There was a children's section. It was quite unusual to see in a comic store. But I had no complaints. Beggars can't be choosers, right? Well, my hope for this store was slowly dying by the second. The first thing I took notice of were the comics. They were outrageously overpriced. I'd understand if they were collectibles or something ultra rare, but they weren't. The latest issue of one of my comics was being sold for $15. Not a graphic novel, not a collection of issues, a single issue. It appeared that all of the comic issues were just randomly priced. I picked out another copy of the comic issue I was holding to compare prices. The second one was $10. Still a bit much for a single issue. But nothing can compare what happens next. I felt a presence real close behind me, and a sweaty hand on my shoulder. I turned to face the person and was greeted by a planet-sized man. He was very round with scrawny legs and bulgy arms. He looked to be in his late 30s. He had a dirty orange t-shirt with a comic character I'm not familiar with, a stubbly fat neck, and beady eyes that were enlarged by his goggle-sized glasses. He smelled like he did not know what deodorant was once in his entire life. This was before a time when I knew what a neckbeard was, but I'm pretty sure he fits the description. Sounds about right. He gave me this yellowish smile.
Hi, can I help you with anything?
I'm practically mute in public, but I managed to whisper, "No, thank you." He was not even looking at me. He was looking right at my thighs. Ew. It was summer out here in Florida, Satan's goddamn front porch. And I was wearing shorts that showed off a little more skin than I was used to. It was my first time wearing that, and I was still feeling really self-conscious. He made eye contact with me again and gave me that gross smile again.
I'm the owner of this humble little shop. You let me know if you need anything.
Just the way he said it, his voice was made out of grease. I'd be drenched in it. He left me alone and went back behind the counter. I noticed there was an older woman with him and a couple of little kids, no older than 5 or 6. I'll explain why this is important soon. I took no mind, really. I went back to searching for comics. I found a Tales from the Crypt comic for 75 cents. Well, thank goodness for that, given the erratic pricing. But as soon as I held it up to inspect it, it was immediately ripped from my hands, and I spun around, and there's the store owner, with my potential comic in his hand.
Oh no, this is way too violent for a young lady,
He scoffs.
Hang on a minute.
He leaves me dumbfounded to go find something. When he came back, he handed me a young romance comic. The retro covers were that of a blonde-haired girl crying over how much her boyfriend hurts her, but she still loves him. If only she could change him. I really hate romance, especially at that age in my life.
This was much more appropriate for someone of your caliber.
It isn't uncommon for a comic book store owner to recommend other comics, or to take certain ones away from you if you're obviously underaged and you're trying to read a mature comic. But neither situation applied here. I shook my head, and all I could muster was, "No thank you." I made a motion trying to say that I wanted the Tales from the Crypt comic back, but he kept it far out of my reach and continued to talk.
Nonsense, this comic is too horrible for a young maiden such as yourself.
Young maiden? Really?
The story is far too complex.
The fuck? He points at young romance.
At least with this, you'll have relatable characters, and the art is far more pleasing to the female eye. It's an easier story to follow.
What a fucking asshole. I felt my brain snap. I felt like this jerk just assumed that all women read comics for the pretty pictures and not the story. I'm gonna go on a little rant here because this really gets under my skin. The artwork is one of the very important roles in a comic book, next to the story and character building. The art on the cover is what draws you into the world and what it's trying to convey. Then the story and how characters interact with one another captures the reader. But even then, you want to see the characters move and emote on the pages. If you were to have a toddler draw the art of insert your favorite comic/manga title here, would you still read it? The characters and the story is the same, but again, the artwork is less than desirable. Art, character building, and story are the three main things you focus on when reading a graphic novel of any kind. Take one out of the equation, and everything falls apart. Any good, avid comic reader and creator will tell you that. I was raised by comic readers, so I especially know that. To say that I, a female, is solely drawn to the art and not the story, I take great insult to that, good sir. But being the shy and nervous wreck I am, I clammed up. I muttered something along the lines of, "Well, I like the other one." Before he could say anything, my mom pulls me aside and tells me that she forgot to give something to one of the teachers at her school. She pulled me outside, and there were honestly no objections from me. It was sad that I didn't get any comics, though. My brothers followed us out, and once we're out in the car, my mom apologized for pulling us out early. I look confused, and she starts explaining. She said that she did not like the way that guy was looking at me, and that she saw from his counter he was ogling any young woman who would walk by or enter the store. I felt pretty disgusted. But the real icing on the cake is that she recognized him and the woman behind the counter with him. They had attended a few PTA meetings regarding their children. This guy and that woman were husband and wife. That floored me. He's married, and he had the stones to creep on women in his store with his wife and kids around. Thus, readers, he has been given the name Family Beard. My brother also had a few complaints about the store, but none were nearly as extreme as this, and we agreed that this is not the store for us. Although we did find a much better store, this was not the last we heard from old Family Beard. While we never met him again, tales of his creepiness had ways of coming to us. We have a game night at a cafe, our local cafe, who knows our name by heart. Most of the people who come were from Nigel's store and a few close friends. One of them being Emily, who had come back from selling her artwork in Miami. They too had tried Family Beard's comic book store, and they too turned it down. Either it was ridiculously expensive, but it was more along the lines of something else. One by one, they began to recount their tales of horror. One of the table told us how he brought his 2 young girls in to look around, and Family Beard got up from the counter and hovered really close behind them and stayed there. Not bothering with the customer at the counter, Family Beard's body was moving up and down, inching closer to the youngest. When she took notice and tried to walk away, he held his hand on her shoulder to keep her from moving away and tried to strike up a conversation to make things less awkward. Keep in mind that these girls are 12 and 15 at the time. Oh, no. That person, the father, had to physically put himself between Family Beard and his children to finally get him to back off. Another former patron of the Family Beard, a young woman this time in her 20s, she and another person were talking about some Marvel comics, and Family Beard tried to get in the conversation and tried to lay some comic book facts, and was woefully failing. When she kindly reminded him that he was wrong and laid down the actual facts, he screamed at her, called her a few choice words, and I'm not comfortable repeating here or anywhere, and he chased her out of the store and told her not to come back. She told us she thought he was going to hit her. Wow, what a fucking bastard. There are other stories, but I don't want to make this post any longer than it has to be. Most of them are him creeping on high school girls, stealing from others, taking money from customers, and not ordering what they asked for. I will say, on more than one occasion, Family Beard's wife would often leave her kids with him while she went to run errands. I can't possibly imagine what they were learning from Family Beard when he's like this. Ugh. Emily sat at the table, listening carefully to her friends complain about this new comic book guy. Her face was that of disgust, but also intrigue. Surely nobody can be that right, she asked the table. Silence was her only answer, along with a few uneasy glances. Little did we know, she was going to pull something dumb and really dangerous. The next time we meet up with Emily, she tells us her Family Beard story. I'll try retelling this the best I can from her point of view. She told us that she went to visit Family Beard's store on the weekend with her boyfriend, mostly out of sick curiosity. Emily's a nice person and gave even the worst person the benefit of the doubt. But she's not foolish. Her plan was to go investigate the store on her own at first, and her boyfriend would wait in the car, keeping watch. There were windows, gazing into the front of the store was no problem. She told her boyfriend that if she ever looked physically uncomfortable or if Family Beard looked like he would try something, that he'd come in and talk to the guy, basically rescue her. Having nothing better to do, her boyfriend agreed, and sweet Emily got out of the car and went to confront this dragon. She told my mom and I that the store was completely empty, so it's just her and the beard. Emily starts to work her way through the comic books on the wall. A few minutes passed, and Family Beard decided to make his move. He got up from the counter and stood behind her. Emily told us he smelled so bad that she was surprised her eyes had not melted out of their sockets.
Hi, I'm Family Beard. You need help with anything?
He asked her. She shot him a polite smile and replied with, not really, I'm just looking. But this did not faze the Family Beard. He didn't go back to the counter, and he just stood there next to her, uncomfortably close. Every time she tried to move away, he would close the 2-inch gap between them. He tried to strike up a conversation. Emily, being sweet that she is, tried to follow along the topic being discussed, but she didn't want to be this close to that smelly man. She moved away again, and trying not to make it too obvious, he moved closer. She moved away again, and he would move closer. This time she tried to move to another shelf, but Family Beard had blocked her way and motioned her to look at a particular shelf by the back room, where it was clearly out of view from anyone who happened to walk by. And then it clicked. She informed us that she felt like she was being herded there, like some animal, and if she was to even go near that room, she felt like she would be in trouble. We shudder to this day when we think about it. She brushed off Family Beard's suggestion and told him that she'll go there later. Even as she continued to look, Family Beard tried his very hardest to get her to go to the back. He even tried pushing her in that general direction with his whole greasy-ass body. What a fucking asshole. She saw an opportunity and managed to get past him and put a display stand between them. Every time he tried to go around the stand to her, Emily would quickly jump to the other side. Once he realized this sort of tactic wasn't going to work, he retreated back to the counter, but his creepiness, it didn't end there. Once Emily had what she wanted, she went to check out. She was on her toes, ready to bolt out the door if Family Beard tried to get her into the back room again. When she set her comics on the counter, Family Beard grabbed her hands.
I need to show you something. You'll definitely like it.
He turned around and bent down for all the world to see his ass crack and grabbed a large black binder. He turned back around and dropped it on the glass counter that nearly cracked under the weight. Emily told us that she was a bit confused, but also nervous. All she wanted to do was get out of there, and this guy was doing everything he could to keep her in there. She cursed herself for being so polite sometimes. Family Beard opens the binder to reveal pages and pages of comics which were nothing but porn. Covers of naked women in stages of undress and or in compromising positions. It got worse when he turned pages to Japanese tentacle porn section. Another quick note here. I learned from my dad about this particular situation much later. Some comic stores do cater to that particular genre, but they don't carry so much and order very little. Comic owners are only allowed to even show them the special catalog if and only if the customer expresses interest and gives verbal consent to look through that said catalog. If not, depending on which state you're in, the store owner can go to jail for something along the lines of public indecency. I'm not totally familiar with these kind of things, so don't really quote me on this one, but the whole situation's still pretty messed up. Emily thought so too. She was in shock and was at a total loss for words. Family Beard didn't notice or simply didn't care. He then flipped the page to a naked, dark-haired, large-breasted woman in a position doing something that should not be repeated in polite company. Family Beard pointed at the woman, practically drooling.
You know, she looks a lot like you. Do you model? You look like you could model. You have those great tits only models have. You could model for me. I have a studio in the back. Ugh.
Fucking ew! Holy shit! This time he tried reaching for her hands again, but before he could, Emily's boyfriend entered the store with a simple, "Hey, you about done?" Family Beard's face went pale.
So is that your boyfriend? Ugh.
She didn't respond to Family Beard. Family Beard quickly moved to close the binder and hide it behind the counter. He moved to grab the stack of comics for her so he could check her out. Emily shook her head and walked away from the counter and out the door with her boyfriend. No amount of comics with ridiculous prices was worth being in that store even a second longer. As she and her boyfriend left, Family Beard ran out of the store with her comics, yelling that she needed to pay for them. Emily and her boyfriend ignored him and drove off. She laughs about it now, but once she was done with her tale, my mom and I heard what he was trying to do. We gave her a hug, and Emily's the sister I never had, and I'm happy nothing happened to her. What happened next, I only heard from former customers who still, for some reason, shopped at that guy's comic store. Karma hit him big time. While he didn't really get called out for his creepy behavior, he did lose the store. Turned out he was taking money from people who were trying to open up a pull, and he wasn't doing it. This also goes for taking money for special orders and not following through with them. With the lack of trust and fed up with his personality, Family Beard lost almost all of his customers. The real last time I heard of Family Beard was through my mom. She had a sit down with his wife, who had a huge black eye. Holy shit. Family Beard's wife told my mom that she caught him sexting another girl he met through the store, and when she attempted to confront him, he smacked her across the face and attempted to assault her. Fuck that guy. Holy shit. Fucking asshole. Cherry on top was this abuse happened outside where the neighbors could see, and they called the police. Fed up with him, the wife pressed charges and filed for divorce. I wish I could make this shit up. I had this sort of an idea because of my dad. Comic store owners are the kind of people you really want to be friends with. So I was really shocked to meet people like Nigel and Family Beard, but my dad informed me that the reason why people like Nigel and Family Beard really failed is because they failed to connect and build a good relationship with any of the customers. If you don't do that, and of course it's bad for everybody. On the bright side, my dad got a job at a comic store. Although he doesn't own it, he's still happy to be doing what he loves most. Guess who makes an appearance in his store? Nigel. And boy, he calls a whole lot of something. I'll post that story if anybody's interested. This post is getting pretty long as it is. And Moonhorse, if you're reading this, cheers. Thank you for posting this story. This is a pretty long story, but I'm going to post the whole thing, so I'm not going to give too much of a rant here at the end, because holy shit, this one went on for a while. But my god, that was a hell of a story. That guy, Family Beard, is a fucking asshole, and I hope his ass is in jail for what he did. Fucking prick. I can't stand people like that. Nigel sounds like a fucking prick too, and I really would like to hear that story, so please, do write more. This was a long one, but thank you all for being here. If you have your own story that you'd like to send in, you can send it to me at r/moonhorsestories. I look forward to reading your stories. I check it every day. And if you'd like to support this channel, and I really hope you do, you can do that by donating to Patreon or buying something from the merch store. I have all these things and more. There are links down below. Check them all out. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next episode. Okay, goodbye.